Hello, everyone. My name is Sophia Hall, and I'm the moderator for today's Meet a Poet session. I'm a poet myself. I'm from Washington, D.C., where I served as the Youth Poet Laureate in 2023. I'm a student at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, where I study both English and creative writing. I'm delighted to introduce today's poet to you, Tara Prakash. Tara is the 2025 National Youth Poet Laureate runner-up and the Youth Poet Laureate of the United States South. She also holds the titles of inaugural Maryland Youth Poet Laureate and 2024 Montgomery County Youth Poet Laureate. She's a 3-time National YoungArts winner and a 2-time Scholastic Art and Writing National Gold and Silver medalist. She's had her work recognized by the New York Times, Princeton University, and the National Council of Teachers of English. She founded the nonprofit Right to Write to teach creative writing to under-resourced youth. And in her free time, she can be found camping with her Scouts troop, playing ping pong, or hiking with her dog. She's an incoming freshman at Princeton University, and her book, Memory Map, is forthcoming in October and is available for pre-order at Finishing Line Press. I'm really excited to have her joining us today. Thanks so much. After the reading, we're going to have a brief Q&A session, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tara.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for that intro, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I'll just start with my first poem. To give some context, I wrote this after kind of just seeing just reading the news each day and just seeing like all these kind of awful things happening in all these different places and figuring out how to hold it all when like I'm in my house and something awful is happening somewhere else and I have no control over that, and kind of just exploring that helplessness. And so I wrote this poem kind of to do that. How do you save a house on flames and everyone in it? What I mean is I'm throwing the tennis ball to my 4-year-old dog as evening sun presses itself into the horizon. And a little boy is shot once and then again, right in the center of his Marvel superhero shirt, hand-me-down and stained with ketchup, where he bleeds out his small body onto a cobbled street, all rocky like even the road doesn't know where to go. What I mean is I'm ordering a BLT sandwich with a side of fries in the silver diner booth, and another baby is stillborn, and the mother grieves her empty body in the hospital bed under sterile yellow lights, and thousands of miles away, a girl and her brother fish through the garbage with cracked and calloused fingers, and they are searching for something still left in a wrapper. No, just for something. And I'm stretched under the covers at night, pulled into sleep. And someone does not wake up. And someone does not wake up. And someone does not wake up. And in the morning, I wake up. And the day is mine, curled up at the foot of my bed. And a dog lies at a concrete curb burned with cigarette butts, watching a man shake a tin can and wag a sign scrawled in magic marker. And it's like he's talking to a wall, the way no one looks his way as they pass, or like he is the wall, made of brick, crimson like a scab. Nothing more than something wounded, trying to protect itself further. And this is the moment he loses his happiness and the high-pitched laughter that comes with it, the contagious kind that won't return for some time. What I mean is I can't save something burning from the inside out. The heat is getting to me. I breathe in curled gray smoke and belly sobs and grief, and each day it becomes harder to find air. There is only so much sadness a body can hold. What I mean is I love my ancestors, the dark-haired, dark-eyed people clothed in saris and kurtas who held me as a bundle, something pink with a shock of black hair, fresh to this place and clear-lunged. but they left me a world in flames. I forget what other colors look like. This place is red, so red the red sun bleeds into each night, and morning cracks itself into birth, like how wildfire pushes fireweed out its ash soil womb into a half-lifetime of smoky air. Maybe this world is like that too, like if we set, we can rise. Grandmother, I don't know where you are, but I'm looking up when I say this. Remember when we sprawled out on the cool sand, bare feet and thin cover-ups, the sky all blue, baby blue and royal blue and electric blue breaking into day? In that moment, it felt like everything could be saved. I fall into sleep, dreaming of those blues, like hose water, like rainfall, like we can find something to douse this, to rescue the burning house and the things inside of it. That was the first poem. The next poem I'll be reading is kind of a shift. It's exploring my love of the outdoors and also my kind of captivation with aging and memory. And just for context, both sets of my grandparents live less than 10 minutes away from me, and they have for most of my life. And so I'm really close with them, and seeing them kind of decline in health has been like hard to watch. And so a lot of the themes around aging, forgetting, remembrance, those things kind of make their way into my work. And so this poem kind of brings together my love of the outdoors with my interest and focus on aging. On erosion. I bend down to kiss the grass and call it prayer. My jeans smudge with dirt at the kneecaps. Behind me, the swing set groans with age. I say, I love this place, out loud, how sprawled out here, I can feel the world's soily belly breathe alongside mine. The fat red-white woodpecker at the edge of the field beats bark into heartbeat, lined up with my own. I don't think I am any different from this place. The cloud above me looks like the dome of a button mushroom, a large curved puff of white. Maybe when I am old and lying on my bed beneath a cardinal red comforter and my chest feels filled with sticky sap and my voice croaks like a yellow-bellied bullfrog by the lakeside, I will wake up, and the blue river veins in my hand will be pressed into smooth brown skin again, and I will be sprawled out here on the grass, inhaling honeysuckle, and wind will brush away my hair like a mother's hand. Maybe right now, if I ask for rain, the clouds will break open, like the leaves hugging the arm of the willow, pinned to the edge of my childhood playground, where years ago I climbed high enough to let the sun hit my throat, where I held the branch and leaned forward, my sweaty palms pressed against the coarse skin, the bark-covered body holding me like a promise, where I swung toward the ground, where I dropped to soft soil and ran, my small body tumbling into tall grass where I stopped, crouched, to let my footsteps catch up to me, my shadow stretched by afternoon sun, my breath stumbling into breeze. Wind breaks the cloud above me into wispy strands of white. The sky spins and the crescent moon moves with it. Supple bodies always crack with age. River erodes rock. This is how the world is. I close my eyes and wait for the sky to come to a gentle stop. Tears wash down my sandstone cheeks, but everything around me is dry. So the third poem I'll be reading also explores aging and kind of just looks at my family, my extended family, so grandparents, but also my parents, and just how to kind of hold all of that, and holding the relationships and holding the fact that they're aging and kind of the things that come with that. And so it's called Handfuls. Handfuls. I pick blueberries the same way I hold my grandmother's hand. as we walk across the asphalt parking lot to Benihana's, pressing gently, testing the strength of peeling blue skin. There are many ways to love a person, and only some will break them down, like my grandfather, who knows me in sneezes, knows me in the contours of my shoulders, pictures my 6-year-old self, licking a lemon popsicle on the hot stone bench outside Brookside Gardens, a day before he went in for the surgery that left him blind, feeling our hair for height when we visit. At mealtimes, his plate is a clock. My father spoons fried rice at 3 o'clock and red vegetable curry at 11 o'clock, and as I sit across the table and watch him, I wonder if he is okay. My father, who cried for the first time that day when he left the hospital, me upstairs throwing a rubber ball into a hoop fitted onto the frame of my bunk bed. That was how he found me. And that was where I learned that tugging on the hem of a crying man's navy t-shirt, asking what's happening, only makes him cry harder. A frail hand, blueberries spilling, a melting lemon popsicle, an unraveling navy t-shirt. I cup my hands and despair that they cannot hold more. So this next poem that I'll be reading is called Everything is Lava But Us. And I explored during the pandemic, my friends and I would go biking a lot. And so I was kind of just exploring how special that was and like having that time in that space and just being able to just soak in the outdoors and kind of make this really special memory, even among a lot of hard things happening. Everything is lava but us. The summer sunlight hugs the rocks in gold. It happens every August. Can you hear the water, I ask? With you, I say everything I wonder out loud. Sprawled across the granite, you tell me an old traffic light has sunk to the bottom of the river, big and yellow and rusted. Maybe there is a road here, a direction of where things were supposed to go. I look at you when I say this. We skip stones from one bank to the other, build witches' castles with wet clumps of sand, and then we play a game where we pretend everything is lava except each other. So it's not weird when you grab onto my shoulders and say, I'll protect you from the whole world. When the rocks are rocks again, I hope the offer still stands. This day can last forever, our bicycles against the mangled old willow tree, the sun through cotton ball clouds, hot on our backs. Your eyes look different in this light. The sky stutters into darkness, and as I step onto the first rock to cross the river, my foot slips on the granite algae carpet, and I stumble into the water. Chills trap my breath in a cage of ribs. I crouch down. Your back is to me, a dark outline willow curved. You're mounting your bike. Maybe if I stay here long enough, the water, red from the setting sun, will turn hot enough to burn the skin off my body, and you will come back. You will have to come back and pull me out. The next poem I'm reading is called Flat Irons, and this is also around aging, but also brings in my love of the outdoors. And just for context, the Flatirons are a mountain range in Colorado, and my cousins live in Colorado, and they have for many years, and so we go there almost every year, and it's a really special place. And their house, they have a really beautiful view of the Flatirons, and so they have this massive window in their living room that overlooks them, and so it's like a very special place for me. And so it's a mountain range in Colorado. Flatirons. Light soaks into the carpet like touch. This place hugs like a child, gold washing over my skin, laughter rocking across the shores of our shaking bodies. You look young again here, the sun ironing your wrinkles into smooth fabric. I forget why we are laughing until we stop, our breath caught in heaves, in the space between the gaps in our teeth. By the feeder, a bird chirps twice, and it feels like forgiveness. We push together a nest of pillows on the ground and sprawl out, enjoy the space our bodies take up. The television is off. I watch my reflection in the dark screen. I can see the gray. Outside, the flatirons slice across the sky. Frost cools the peaks, and wrinkles ripple through slabs of rock, roasting under an angry sun. I look over at you, picking at the red threads in the rug, the embers. We don't need to be scared, I want to say. If the mountains can age, so can we. Instead, I look back out the window and pray for snowfall. So the next poem I'll be reading is called When We Played Angels, and I was kind of just exploring my love of snow days, and when I think of childhood, I kind of think of those snow days where you're at home and you're kind of with like your sibling or something. So I was thinking about spending snow days with my brother and how we would make these igloos that were pretty big, and we would like stay in them and kind of hide out there, and it was like a really special time. And so then I was kind of just thinking about the idea of a snow day and kind of the things you do and how it feels and how fleeting the moment can be. When we played angels. Because the afternoon is fat with winter, we marshmallow into packable lightweight jackets, press our breaths into the space between our chests and the zippers, and hopscotch ourselves through sidewalk squares. Then we build an igloo big enough for the both of us. Outside our self-made shelter, we splay into angels on the salt-slicked concrete. Through half-closed eyes, streetlights squeeze into halos of amber light. We listen to the snow chew and lap at our boot bottoms. In the mornings, we bathe ourselves in sleet-drenched forgetfulness as the igloo melts around us. Years from now, these days will puddle into slush. We will be 17 with learner's permits, 22 with degrees, 32 with families and 9-to-5s, and we will no longer remember the shape of our bodies ascending towards earth, skin flushed sacred and smoky under the streetlights, arms and legs swinging maps into the gray snow, the distance traveled to find ourselves. And so then the last poem I'll be reading is in Abecedarian. And so this poem is, with all Abecedarians, each line starts with the next letter of the alphabet. And so I was kind of exploring my relationship with my mom here, and kind of just looking at that, the love and kind of the phrases that she says to me about how much she loves me, and kind of just exploring that. Countdown in Abecedarian. All the afternoon sunlight is bathing this room, washing up against the bunk bed and soaking into the walls like rainwater. I am 5 and measure my world by centimetered length, the people who orbit me. I tell you, don't go with my full body because I am too sleepy for words. Everything here is warm and weathered. I love you forever, my mom, you whisper, hands gilded and calloused and used. I rub sleep into my eyes and stretch my body into the space of the mattress. This is how we bask, summer mornings cupped in our closed hands, palms sticky with shaved ice, tiger's blood. Your favorite, so mine too. And I ask, how do you just know? Because I don't want the conversation to end. And you pull me closer. I know, you say, with the kind of voice that could convince Einstein of a flat world. You say, I love you to the moon and back. Later that day, I Google how far the Earth is from the moon, so I know the distance of your love. 9 a.m. today, I turned 17. I whispered into my bed rafters that nothing would change. In the afternoon, I opened my email, even though you made a no screens on birthday rule when I got my first phone in 6th grade. I learn I won an award for a poem, a sestina I wrote about my grandfather and the stars and the sun. From the dining room, I tell you the news. You slice a quesadilla, birthday girl's choice, and bring it over. I'm so proud of you, you say. I reach across the table for the plate and wonder how many miles I have left before the love runs dry. That evening, I search for more writing contests on my computer, buying myself miles and blue-tinged sky. I scroll until my eyes tire with blue light. Standing above the black and white ice cream cake, I blow out the flame first, then dream of us, curled on the sun-baked bed, you tracing the shape of my dark green veins, the ivy pathways, the distances stretched across skin and soily plains. I wake up an hour later, hands weld to cup your smile the same way we held those mornings, and the inches between us, your exhales full. The gold medals were cold and heavy, but the I love you left your mouth hot and warm, too plump for our small kitchen. It's almost midnight. Streetlight zigzags into my room. Outside, the moon is big and white and just an arm's reach away. Thank you. And so, yeah, that was the last poem that I'll be reading. And yeah, it was really special getting to read. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hearing all of your poetry together in one continuous breath was really beautiful. The meditations on aging, on growing up and inheriting a world full of complications, on becoming an adult during a global pandemic. And you handle all of this difficult truth beautifully in your work. You're a very, very accomplished young poet. And I just want to go back to the origins of when you first started writing poetry. Was there a particular moment or experience that set you on this path of poetry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always been a big reader. And so with that, I kind of naturally came into writing. And I used to mainly just do like fiction and nonfiction when I was like much younger. And then in middle school, I had this really incredible teacher, Miss Becky, in sixth grade. And she really encouraged me to not only write poetry, but to also get it out to the world and to submit it. And so she pushed me to play with like forms, so like sonnets, villanelles, and then to send my work out. And kind of before that, I had been really private with my work. Like I wouldn't even show my parents. And so kind of having her encouraging me to get my work out there and just like sharing it with the world instilled in me this habit and made me just really fall in love with poetry as kind of a way of processing the world and like a medium of thinking, not just like a genre of writing.
Yeah, teachers are so vital for encouraging students and writers. I mean, I remember my English teachers and teachers in general who supported me even at a very young age. And without them, I probably wouldn't be the writer, a student, person I am today. And it's interesting you bring up form and technique because my next few questions are going to be about that. In your first poem, How Do You Save a House on Flames and Everyone in It, you shift between the flush left and flush right sides of the page, kind of juxtaposing two different types of living or being. And how do you think this formal choice shapes the reader's experience of the poem, and how did you make the decision to kind of use this unusual form?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you mentioned that because for people listening, you obviously can't see how it is on the page. And so, yeah, so I have it kind of as you go from one end to the other of the page. There's not really a ton in the middle. And so I think that as I was writing it, I wasn't really sure because that is kind of different for me. Usually I write it more like in a traditional way. And so I think I kind of just wanted like the chaos of the piece itself to be mirrored on the page. And I do feel like it's easier for me when I'm reading it aloud to kind of like embody that space of chaos when my eyes are constantly moving from one end to the other. And so I think that the form works well in that way. And it just shows like all of these things, it just shows the chaos of all these different things happening in all these places, and it's just like so much, and it's like flooding and overwhelming, and the page and like the chaos of it kind of reflects that. And so I kind of wanted the experience reading it and also performing it to embody that, and I feel like when I organize it this way, it's kind of easier to do that.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I noticed you often use italics in your poetry, which I also do, but usually for introducing dialogue or inserting a voice other than my own into the poem, but you use italics a lot for emphasis or maybe creating a shift in perspective. So, what do you think about the role of italics on the page, and how do you choose to use them?
Yeah, I didn't actually think about that. I feel like that's a really like observant point. That yeah, I don't know. I think that I do use italics for dialogue, but I also use it in other ways. And I think that at least when I'm performing, it's easier to kind of emphasize when I have that. And I think also when people are reading it on the page, knowing that it's in italics kind of puts more focus on it. And when I'm writing a poem, if there's like a phrase or a word that really sticks out to me or something that I feel like is a central idea, I'll often italicize it to kind of give it more focus. But I kind of did that, especially in like the House on Flames piece with like the colors. So like this place is red or like the sky all blue. And so for those kind of like thematically, like the colors, I would kind of do bring more like italics in, or when like someone does not wake up, like things like that, I'll like make my voice louder, or just things that kind of bring more attention to the parts of the poem that I want to be have brought more attention to, or that I feel like are cornerstones of the poem.
Yeah. You do it really masterfully, just layering the voices on top of each other. I'm going to switch to a question from the audience. It's from Victor. And I just want to encourage everyone listening that if you have a question for Tara, feel free to put it in the chat. So, Victor's question is about AI poetry and what your thoughts are about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think with AI, it is something that a lot of people are wondering. And I do think that AI can be used in a lot of ways for different things, but there is something very human about poetry that you can't really replicate in a machine, or in AI. And I think poetry is one of the key things that AI can't do, because it requires being human and like having these feelings and like processing the world in certain ways that I just don't think a machine is capable of. And so I think I am curious about how AI can be used as a tool, maybe as throughout part of the process of generating ideas or things like that. But I do feel like there is something uniquely human about poetry that is hard for an AI. But it is something I'm wondering about with all of the AI that's been coming recently.
Yeah. I mean, going back to our earlier conversation about teachers, I remember my sixth grade English teacher had this quote up in her room by Robert Frost: "No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader," which is just about the inherent humanity and human emotional connection that is transported throughout writing and poetry especially. It kind of is this human emotion that transcends everything, and once you read a poem you feel like you can access an individual's perspective, and that's something that I think requires human interaction, especially if you're using AI to write a generic birthday poem, let's say. If the recipient of that poem finds out that you didn't actually write it, that you used something else, they might feel a lot less special and kind of feel a little bit disappointed. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like there is something kind of inherent with the poem that like the person who is giving you the poem like put time into writing it and creating it, and it's kind of something that comes from them. And so I think it can lose a lot of its value when you learn that like a machine wrote it, or something like that, because it just feels kind of more distant and less personal. And I feel like, yeah, the recipient, if you're writing it to someone, might feel less seen, if they know that it's just written by like a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want switching from like computers and technology, I want to go towards nature and metaphor, which you had a lot of present in your work. I really, really enjoyed it as someone who loves hiking and being in nature. Um, in your poem on erosion, you kind of personify nature and use it as a synecdoche, a part of a whole for your own body, talking about how the sap is blood, your veins are rivers, and the woodpecker drilling into a tree is your heartbeat, which was such a beautiful image. So I just wanted to ask you to expand on your relationship with nature, and how does poetry allow you to expand on your and explore your relationship with nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always loved being outdoors, like since I was little. And then in sixth grade, I joined Scouts, like Boy Scouts, when they opened to girls. And so then I would like go on a bunch of campouts and hikes, and I would just be outside even more. And I think then also throughout high school, seeing my grandparents decline in age, like my grandfather has Parkinson's, my grandmother has Alzheimer's, then kind of, and learning more throughout like science classes about what erosion is. I kind of saw parallels between erosion of a rock or the outdoors and erosion of a body or a mind. And I was kind of thinking about all the kind of parallels between an outdoor kind of being and like a human body. And so I was just thinking about all the ways that what's outside, like rivers, heart, like rivers, beating bark, like all of that mirrors things that are intrinsic to a person. And so I was kind of wrote on erosion to explore like this like intense and deep love for the outdoors, but while also recognizing the kind of temporariness of both of the speaker themselves, and recognizing like with the last line like sandstone cheeks, I was kind of thinking about the speaker as eroding, and kind of the outdoor and the nature as staying the same, at least for a little longer. And so just showing that disconnect and that kind of desire to want to stay in a space for longer than you're able to, and you can't really defy like the laws of nature, and just kind of sitting with that. And so all of that kind of just like kind of just my interest in the outdoors and also with aging kind of came together to create this piece.
Yeah, and you reflect on the outdoors in a way that kind of gives you comfort with watching your grandparents age and watching yourself age, because you see that everything around you is going to age and that change is the only constant. I think it's really beautiful. And I also feel like the way you talk about nature and the environment is very familiar. It's almost like you're talking about a friend. It's not distant or separated from the human world, especially in Everything is Lava But Us. You kind of render the natural world in intimate, almost domestic terms, like describing the slippery rocks as granite's algae carpet, which is such a cool turn of phrase. I will always think about that whenever I walk over a slippery rock. And then you also describe your friend's back as willow curved. So just kind of seeing these parallels and connections between the human world and the natural world, and almost saying there's no distinction between it. So, do you find that the natural world is a primary source of figurative language and metaphor in your work?
I think definitely, yeah, and a lot of those connections that you were making, I didn't even think about as I was writing, but it's really cool to kind of see that those connections are being made, and that those things are kind of taken from my work. And I do think when I was writing it, I was trying to show that it's all kind of one and the same, and there isn't really a separation. Um, and I think that that's kind of also been my personal experience, like just in all the time I spend outdoors, and it doesn't really feel like a separation. It just feels, yeah, like very fluid, and just kind of, and so I think I kind of try to capture my experience in my poetry, and just showing how fluid it can be.
Yeah, I think we already touched on this a little bit in Flatirons. It was cool to hear the connection between you and this mountain range in Colorado, but um, you grapple with age growing up and finding solace in the natural world too, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, yeah. Colorado is like a really special place for me, so I enjoyed writing about it.
Yeah. We talked about this off of the before the live stream started, but you just graduated high school and you're going on a gap year to Nepal, which has some really great mountains. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll be going to Nepal for 3 months, leaving in September. And so I'm really excited for that. It'll be a mix of kind of homestays and then like trekking and exploring, language learning. And so, and I've never been to Nepal, and the views are just like gorgeous. And so I'm also sure that a lot of poetry will be inspired by what I see there and the experiences I have. And I think, yeah, just being in that beautiful space, we're going to be doing a lot of like elevation gain in the things that we're doing, and we're going to be like hiking through the Himalayas. And so it will be I think it will remind me, it'll kind of bring me back to the headspace I was in writing Flatirons, just because I'll be in a similar kind of space. And I'm excited to see like what, when I have kind of this break from academics and electronics and just have like this time apart, I'm kind of excited to see what writing I create or what like ideas come to me while I'm in this space. So I'm really looking forward to traveling there.
This kind of makes me wonder, do you think you write best when you're in nature? Is that the most inspirational place for you? Or like what is your writing routine? What are your habits?
I don't know. When people say like they have like this one spot that they have to write in, for me it's kind of different. Like I think I write really well with other people, and so like Writopia is great. That's like the writing workshop that I'm in weekly, and so having like other people that I'm writing with keeps me like really focused and motivated, and just it feels like there's a lot of creative energy in the room, and so I think I write really well with other people. I think I also write I think I also enjoy writing outside. And if oftentimes if I'm like writing in my room and I'm kind of stuck, I'll sit on the porch, or I'll sit in the backyard, and that'll kind of get ideas flowing. And so I think just being in a space that's so alive and dynamic, and there's so much happening, like there's birds chirping and there's squirrels and there's insects and like mosquitoes and there's just like all this life, I think just kind of inspires like a lot of ideas to kind of flow when they weren't before.
Yeah. Our conversation is kind of reminding me of this one poem we talk about in my class at UPenn called ModPo, which is Modern and Contemporary US Poetry. I'm blanking on the title of the poem, but basically it was written by this Harvard freshman who was really lonely and he was going on a walk in the woods. And one of the lines is, "The trees tell us who we are." And it's just kind of seeing ourselves mimicked in nature and kind of like this random occurrence of two trees standing next to each other. And also, Tara, you and I just kind of happen to be two poets in the DMV area growing up around the same time. The trees are telling us who we are. We're neighbors. We're poets in the same sphere. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
I wanted to talk about your poem Countdown as an Abecedarian and how you move from a 5-year-old to a 17-year-old really deftly, which is like another example how you handle time in your poems really well. But specifically, I wanted to touch on how you mentioned validation often comes through accomplishment or achievement in your writing, such as your poetry awards. Do you think that this external validation ever influences how you approach writing?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, when I was younger, I would definitely mainly just write for the love of it. And I think throughout high school, at times with the college process and just like the intense academics, that it would felt like I was kind of writing more to achieve awards. And so the last few months, I've been really trying to reframe writing to just be doing it for my love of it. And so I might spend a few hours writing a poem that I never submit, but I just wrote it for my own joy. And the writing process of it was the like success. And so I'm kind of trying to like tune back into my love of the craft, which I think I've always had, but has been kind of buried, I think, at times with the focus that like it feels like people just have on awards and winning things, and just kind of reframe my priorities and remind myself why I write, and all the reasons kind of that I hope to get out of in my writing process, and not necessarily what society or other people kind of deem as like valuable.
Yeah, I really hope that your time away from school will kind of allow you to keep writing and keep up this writing practice. I wanted to ask, are you familiar with the musical Rent and like the song 525,600 minutes?
No, but I've
Okay.
heard of Rent, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, so basically in the song it says that in a year there's 525,600 minutes and that there are so many different ways to measure a year in sunsets, in laughter, and in cups of coffee. And it kind of your poem Handfuls and your poem Countdown and I Was Darian reminded me of that song because you talk about how there are many ways to love a person, and then you later talk about how your mother's love is measured in the distance to the moon. So this question is a little bit more abstract, more out there. Like in your view, what do you think is a good measure or a true measure of love for someone?
That's a really good question. And I like that. I haven't seen Rent, but I want to listen to that song now because I think that does capture kind of what, like how I'm, like the way that Handfuls and Countdown and Absidarian kind of like use measurement and like those kinds of ideas. And I think I've definitely come to learn that like love really is infinite and it's not a zero sum game. And you can love, like loving more people or loving broadly doesn't kind of change the amount of love you can have for a person. And so I think that there isn't really like a measurement. And I think that when I was younger and she would say, I love you to the moon, I would take that so literally. And I kind of thought that that would be a cool idea, like turning that on its head. Like, what does that mean to say, I love you to the moon and back? And like, how far really is that? But obviously, it's like an expression. And as I've kind of gotten older, I've seen how infinite love is, and how it really has no measure. And that kind of my interpretations of the limits of love is just like what I'm kind of putting on it and not what is like in reality is there. And so I think, yeah, I don't know, but I think that is interesting, and it makes me want to listen to that song from Ren.
It's a really good song. I highly recommend it. I wonder where that saying even originated from. If it came from, it probably came from before like space travel or travel to the moon was even possible. So maybe that saying happened at a time where it was like physically impossible to even get to the moon. So like the love really would never end because no one could get to the moon and back.
Wow, that is so true. Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering, this is one of the last questions of the session, but if you wanted to talk a little bit more about your experience as a youth poet laureate, representing your community, performing your poems on stage, how does it feel? It's a huge honor, obviously. How do you feel like you have like fit into the role? What's your experience been like?
Yeah, I mean, I think at first I used to just do written poetry, and so it was definitely a shift, kind of moving to this very like outward facing role, and kind of performing more. And I think I'm still kind of getting the hang of it. A lot of like youth poets laureate and spoken word poets come from like theater backgrounds, which I didn't have, and so I felt a little out of my depth and kind of unsure. But I think like over time I've really come to embrace it. I like approach performances instead of with like fear, with like excitement and thinking about my love of the craft. And I think also the focus on performing has led me when I'm writing a piece to be thinking about it more sonically and how it would sound to say it aloud. And so I think that it's changed how I like write a piece itself. Like, how do you save a house on flames and everyone in it was kind of written with the idea that I would be performing it at the National Youth Poet Laureate commencement. And so because I knew I was going to be reading it aloud, I was thinking about the words I was choosing and the way I was putting the sentences together. And so I think that reading a piece aloud changes how I write it. And that's kind of something that's been new with this Youth Poet Laureate and the performances. And it's something that I didn't really expect my writing would shift kind of, but it has in like organic ways.
Now that you are having a book forthcoming, do you feel like the poems in that book are more meant to be page poems or spoken word poems? How did you navigate the line between those two very subtle genres?
Yeah, I think they could be kind of both. I agree that it is subtle. And I think some are probably meant more for the page, whereas some are kind of more performative, or they kind of evoke a certain emotion in an audience who's listening to it versus reading it. But I think that, yeah, I think pulling together the collection of poems for the book was hard because I wanted to kind of have a through line and make it feel cohesive, while also kind of trying to bring in my strongest pieces. And so ultimately I came kind of with the through line of aging and memory, and the whole collection is kind of charting this like territory or terrain, and it's kind of building this map of memory. And so I was able to kind of bring in my kind of favorite pieces while also exploring this question I have of kind of like, what does the map like look like? And as my grandparents are forgetting, like, how can I remember for both of us? Mm-hmm. And so those were kind of the questions I was thinking about as I was like creating the manuscript and thinking about what poems to put in.
Unfortunately, we're almost at the end of our session. I feel like we've had a really great conversation on the power of poetry to remember, to preserve memory despite aging, despite loss. I just wanted to ask you one last question about if anybody watching wants to follow you along for more of your work, where can they read more? Are there any upcoming publications or social media accounts or performances you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, my author website has a lot of my performances and publications. So that's just my full name, Tara Prakash, and then writes.com. And so you can see there kind of more about me and my performances. As of now, I don't know what I have upcoming, but I just performed at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, which was really exciting. And so that's up there. And so, yeah, that kind of is where I put like the different literary happenings.
Great. Everyone check out taraprakash.writes.com. Thank you, Tara, for joining me today on our Meet a Poet program. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you, Sophia.
Bye.